Hi everyone. We are going to read a story tonight that is called Super Lance, the dog who never gave up. See this little wiener dog? I believe it's a wiener dog. Wiener dog in wheelchair. Let's read about Super Lance. Sherm gave us this book to read this story. It's out of the All Creatures book from Guidepost. I ordered the All Creatures books. I love the stories about animals. This one is by Claudia Stenchy from Miami, Florida. At 4, he lost the use of his hindquarters, even his tail, yet no one was ready to count this dog out. 4, that's still very young. I punched off the alarm and lingered in bed, feeling the warmth of our dachshund curled on top of the blanket. Lance always slept on the bed when my husband Caio was away in Brazil on business. 4.5 years old, Lance was intelligent, playful, and affectionate, with a slender tail that never stopped wagging. But for Caio and me, he was more than just good company. We'd been unable to have kids, and Lance filled a big place in our lives. See, that's like Dottie with us, but people didn't understand that. They just she's just a dog. Well, not us. She was our daughter, and still is. We couldn't have kids, and I had her since she was born. She was 17. She shared our lives. When Sherm came into mine and Dottie's lives, Dottie was only a year old. So he's been with her whole life as well. I climbed out of bed and set Lance on the floor. Maybe you'll come to the office today, I said. The ad agency where I worked was dog friendly. Wouldn't that be nice? Halfway to the kitchen, I realized there was no patter of paws behind me. I went back to the bedroom. Lance was in the same place. Come on, let's go for a walk, I said. Even this magic word failed to budge him. Oh, and they like that too. They get excited. He stared at me with a strange, pleading look in his brown eyes. I went to the kitchen and came back with a treat. Ground turkey, Lance. He heaved himself up on his front legs and lurched toward me, dragging his rear legs. How had they suddenly become useless? Frightened, I wrapped him in his blanket and took him to the animal hospital. The whole way there, Lance kept that imploring gaze at me. The vet made the diagnosis. It's a ruptured disc pressing on the spinal cord, he said. A common condition with dachshunds, usually correctable with surgery. The sooner it's done, the better his chances will be. The vet added that there was a 25% chance the operation would fail, but I was certain that between surgery and prayers, our dog would be healed. I phoned my boss to say I wouldn't be in, and then reached Caio in Brazil. He canceled his appointments and booked the next flight home, which wouldn't get him here till the next day. I was alone in the waiting room, not a comforting space like the prayer corner I'd set up in our bedroom, but that wasn't going to stop me from praying fervently for Lance. At last, the surgery was over, and I was allowed to see him. His back was shaved to bare skin, stitches closing a 5-inch incision. With every breath came a moan of pain. Oh. The next 3 days, Caio and I practically lived at the animal hospital. Lance was miserable, his eyes begging, take me home. Soon you'll be back in the park again, chasing your ball, making friends with all the kids, I promised. At home, Lance had to be crated for 45 days. It's over a month. We found a mesh-sided box he could see out of and fitted it with cushions and his favorite toys. Within a few days, the pain was gone, and Lance was in his customary high spirits, flipping his red ball around with his nose. But the weeks passed, and he didn't seem to be regaining the use of his back legs. I emailed other dachshund owners. One of them recommended an animal physical therapist, Dr. Martha Sanchez. She tried herbal medicine, acupuncture, and water therapy, to no avail. Lance was still pulling himself forward with his front legs, dragging his hindquarters pathetically behind him. Since he couldn't wag his tail, he learned to express his feelings with the floppy ears, wiggling them to signal delight, hunching them back when he was anxious. Every day I knelt in the prayer corner of our bedroom, begging God to heal our dog. 2 months after surgery, we learned of the veterinarian school at the University of Florida in Gainesville. They had an MRI machine for small animals, and a world-famous veterinarian neurosurgeon, Dr. Roger Clemens. Through the friend of a friend, we got an appointment and drove the 5 hours north. The doctor looked like the mad scientist in Back to the Future. White hair flying, a troop of students at his heels. 6 of them crowded about him as he gave us the results of his tests. The spinal cord is severed, he told us. I'm sorry, but your dog is permanently paralyzed. Paralyzed? I knew what came next. Emails, chat rooms, veterinarian journals. They all said the kindest thing was to put the dog down. But not Lance. No. Our uncomplaining little dog, pulling himself so valiantly along the floor, he seemed so determined to survive, and he's only 4. I went back to my prayer corner, and Lance went back to sessions with Dr. Sanchez to strengthen the front part of his body. Isn't there any more we can do? I asked Dr. Sanchez. You could try Eddie's Wills, she said. Ed Greenell was a mechanical engineer in Maine whose Doberman Pinscher had a damaged spine. He constructed a metal frame attached to a pair of wheels, which took the place of his dog's back legs. Now he manufactured and sold these wheelchairs for dogs all over the world. Kaio and I went to the website and filled out the order form with Lance's weight, length, and other measurements. 2 months later, a little chariot arrived at Dr. Sanchez's clinic for fitting and final adjustments. The aluminum frame was incredibly light. The wheels on their ball bearings spun at the merest tap. It will take Lance a while to get used to it, the doctor cautioned, as she lifted his hindquarters onto the saddle between the wheels. Some dogs adjust to it in a week or 2, others take longer. It took Lance all of 1 second. The moment Dr. Sanchez set him on the floor, in the contraption he was off, circling the clinic, caneering around corners with little yips of joy. Soon Lance was back in the park chasing his red ball. People were intrigued by his wheelchair. Kids loved it, and he loved them right back. Nuzzling and licking them, yipping and wiggling his ears to express what his tail no longer could. He would make a great happy therapy dog for kids, someone said. Kaio and I looked at each other. A dog in a wheelchair. What an inspiration in a children's hospital. We had to be interviewed by a therapy dog trainer first. Kaio and I answered dozens of questions. How did we control our dog? Could we commit regular hours to this work? Hardest of all, how would we react to being around children in pain? How would he react? Lance sailed through tests for obedience, intelligence, and gentleness. On likeness, children, he was over the top. During training, he was exposed to the smells of a hospital, the shriek of sirens, the rattle of milk carts, the racing feet of an emergency team. None of it fazed him. Still, we were apprehensive. The first time we took him to the Miami Children's Hospital, what I was most concerned about was that he'd greet kids with his happy yipping. No barking was rule 1 for therapy dogs. But how do you tell an excited dachshund not to bark? We didn't have to. From the moment we stepped into the hospital lobby, not a sound came from him, as though he knew exactly what he was there for. He followed the nurses in and out of the young patients' rooms, silent and chipper, a real pro. And the faces of those kids when they saw him. In the first room, Kaio lifted Lance up so the little girl in the bed could pet him. I worried that he'd bestow on her some of his affectionate licks, strictly forbidden in this sanitary setting, but with the same uncanny sensitivity to the situation, Lance didn't let so much as the tip of his tongue slip out of the girl, stroked him, giggling. Her mother followed us into the corridor. In the 2 months she's been here, she said, this is the first time she's laughed. That's sad. Later that day, a boy in leg braces crossed the room, his gait unsteady but determined. He had eyes only for our dog. The boy reached Lance, and a dog in a wheelchair, what an inspiration in a hospital, gave him a kiss. The nurse told us afterward that he had never before walked alone. Kaio and I put together a booklet telling Lance's story. An artist drew cartoons of Super Lance. A photographer took his picture. Another friend designed a Connect the Dots portrait of Lance. And a company that worked for the ad agency did the printing for free. We've given the booklets to more than 1,000 children. Right before we leave for each hospital visit, I stop at the bedroom corner and thank God for answering our prayers. Not the way Kaio and I wanted, but I'm learning that when the answers aren't what we asked for, those are the times to look for something even better. This was God's answer for a little girl who couldn't laugh, and a little boy who couldn't walk, and a couple who couldn't have children of their own. An answer more fulfilling, more creative, more wonderful than anything we could have wished for. I hope you guys enjoyed that story of Super Lance.